recording this to the cloud. And this is a beautiful week in Indiana because it's starting to warm up. And so is this class warming up because we have some hot topics such as mobile learning, wireless learning, ubiquitous learning. Lo and behold, we're at week 13 in this class. And the first article in the monster syllabus is from Ying Tang and Kifeng Timothy Hugh. Timothy, my former student, and Ying, my former, I guess, sort of an advisee of sorts. She was a visiting scholar at Indiana, and I was on her dissertation committee as an external member. She has volunteered to jump in all the way from China, where it is now almost 11 in the morning on Monday morning. It is almost 11 o'clock at night on Sunday night in the USA. And you'll see her articles titled Examining the Utility and Usability of Mobile Instant Messaging in a Graduate Level Class, a Usefulness Theoretical Perspective from the Australasian Journal of Ed Tech 2018. And Ying is going to present some slides to us. I'll talk to her after that, and then she'll talk about her current research and what's been going on there and other researches even before she came to IU. We'll just open it up. So for about 15 minutes, Ying, why don't you kind of summarize what you can from those studies, and then we'll ask some questions after that. I really appreciate you coming in here. My students will ask questions in the Jamboard. Christian Smeltzer will be sending them to you. My students will put ideas in Padlet related to your talk, and maybe we can send those to you as well, and anything my students think up along the way. So listen carefully. Go ahead, Ying, take it away.
Thank you, Curt. Let me share this slide. Can you see the slide?
Oh, and this is Dr. Ying Tang now, because she did pass her dissertation, and she's coming to us from Chongqing University, Southwest China University in Chongqing.
I'm very bonded to Indiana University, actually, because my husband is still studying there, and I gave birth to my children there in Bloomington. So I did my postdoc at Indiana University as well. So it's a lucky place for me. And
children, only one child. I don't think you were here long enough to give birth to two. Just one, a little boy, right?
A little girl.
Little girl, okay.
Stella.
Her name is?
Stella.
Stella. Okay.
So this article, I did it actually I collected data back in 2016, and we published this article in 2019. In the study, we examined the usefulness of mobile instant messaging. And this is also the topic of my PhD dissertation as well. So the motivation of doing this study is I started noticing that people are so engaged with their mobile phones. And there's a term called phubbing. I think this term was coined by some Australian dictionary, meaning phone snubbing, describing a person when you are trying to interact with them, but they constantly ignore you. And I took this picture in the subway of Hong Kong when I was doing my PhD study. You can see that nobody were really paying attention to their surroundings. They're just so into their cell phone. And also another picture I took at the metro of Hong Kong. And when I was doing my teaching job back in 2014 in Philadelphia, and I used to do this a lot. This picture was taken by some Chinese news media, but I used to do this as well. When my students walked into the room, I would ask them to put their cell phones in a pocket like this, because otherwise they would be so into their cell phones I couldn't do any teaching with them. And that was like back in 2014. And there are some facts about smartphone use, and these are data I collected when I was doing this study. So they were back then in probably 6-7 years ago. Sending and receiving messages constituted 81% of all activities mobile phone could be used for. I think this number would go up right now. And among smartphone owners, aged 18 to 29 that were, I think those were college students years. 49 use messaging apps. I assume this figure goes up too. And a 2017 survey found that WhatsApp and WeChat, two of the most popular mobile instant messaging applications globally, had more than almost 2 billion active users respectively. And this data was from 2018. So considering the use of mobile instant messaging and the scary role of it in education, my motivation was to investigate whether teachers could use it for education, and if so, how we can make full use of it to promote education instead of like being scared of it and try to forbid our students from using it in classroom. And mobile instant messaging is the least explored communication mode in education research. So compared to Facebook or Twitter, some other social media tools, MIM is the least explored communication mode, but it's, I think, probably the most widely used communication nowadays. So this is a screenshot of MIM group chat, and I can skip this. So some features of mobile instant messaging, we call it a quasi-synchronous communication. It's different from a synchronous communication like a video chat, and it's different from an asynchronous communication like a discussion forum. It's a quasi-synchronous communication, something in between, because we have this push notification. Users have this flexibility of getting engaged in real time, or they can get engaged in the communication later on when they have time, when they are free. And they can, in MIM, we can send multiple types of messages. You can see that. There's a very easy to start and manage group chat, and it has some web service as well. Yeah, so in this study, we took a usefulness theoretical perspective. So we define usefulness into utility and usability. By saying utility, we say the functionalities needed to perform a learning task, and the usability is how easy users can understand and operate this tool. So this is a theoretical framework we applied to this study. And in the utility, we studied the educational functionality of it and the social functionality of it. And I can directly go to the results. I think that's the part that you are most interested in. So for the educational affordances of MIM, there are several educational activities enabled by MIM. We did this by content analysis. First, it's a transmission. Teachers shared information or materials through MIM. And demonstration, this is a very interesting function because students can use their mobile to access WeChat, and they can also start another web version of it. So basically, there's two things go synchronously. Each group was asked to design a trademark, take a picture, and when they send this to their mobile, like this MIM service, this thing can show up in the web page of it, a web page of MIM too. Does that make sense? So basically, these two things go hand by hand. It is a very easy demonstration tool. And we also use it for dialogue, for journaling, for helpline, and for notebook function as well, because all these conversations, these educational conversations are considered like learning materials. So sometimes students will save all this chat log to be their personal notebook. And for the social presence projection, we use some like codebook to analyze the content of their interaction. So some highlights of the results here. The semi-synchronicity granted students extra time to phrase responses so they can project themselves the way they want. So this is a way to manage their presence in their group. And the use of emoji and stickers can convey feelings very easily, so they make the conversations more livelier and friendlier. And there's some moments function. This moments is like Facebook wall. Yeah, it's like a Facebook wall. So they allow users to curate their personal timeline by posting status updates, much in the same way one might with Facebook personal pages. So by using MIM, it's very easy for students to project themselves in the way they want. And they can perceive others very well as well by using WeChat. So they enable them to better acknowledge their classmates' presence. The interaction is a very easy tool as an icebreaker, helping my students to form offline friendships as well. And the WeChat group provided opportunity to sustain their relationships after the class is over. And for the ease of use part, we use a survey to investigate how easy students feel to use WeChat. And of course, they use it every day on a daily basis. It's a very, very easy tool for them to operate. And it provides location-free group discussion. It allows them to have this presence awareness. It has this nonverbal cue support. By sharing all these different types of functions, students feel it's very easy to use. And they, in another study, we compared it with Canvas. We use Moodle, but it's pretty like the same tool with Canvas. So they complained like by using Canvas, they have to click multiple times to get the place that they really want to get to. So comparing Canvas, Moodle, and WeChat is absolutely much easier to use. And the highlights of this study, two features that were unique to MIM in promoting social presence. It has nonverbal cues, and it integrates messaging and social networking. For the pedagogical activities, the most common one is the transmissive and dialogical functions. And the new one we found in this study is a demonstration and notebook. And we found it's very, there are two new functions provided by social media tools. And for the tensions and remedies, of course, students found some of the features that MIM provides are challenging for them as well. The first one, because of this push notification function, they feel like they are pressed to get connected all the time. So they are being notified all the time, and they feel like they have to be immediate in response. So we suggest that instructors could probably set up the timeline to allow for postponed responses, just to take the pressure off the students' shoulder to respond to the messages all the time. And there's a sense of competition among students, because when they see their classmates have these answers, they feel like they have to share this as well immediately. So there's a sense of competition. We suggest that the instructors can advise students to build on their peers' comments instead of just try to express their own opinions, but to build up this collaborative reporting environments. So just to release this sense of competition from learning activities. And I think that's the end of this. If you have any questions, you can send that to Curt.
Okay, thank you, Ying, for doing that. You can stop the sharing on your screen and we get a bigger picture here. I'll just note that one of my current students just finished her dissertation defense on bit emojis in a K-12 setting, and is now rewriting it for dissertation a little bit. So emojis have become popular during the pandemic, getting kids more actively involved, I guess, or supposed to get kids actively involved from a distance.
Mhm.
So how do you think your study would have changed when you did this study 4 years ago or 5 years ago, published in 2018? What would it be? What would you do differently today in 2022? What kinds of things now interest you in terms of mobile learning? What gaps do you see that still exist? What didn't you do?
We just did a new study actually with one of my friends. We looked into this sort of new mode of learning. We call it integrated learning. So it's different from blended learning. It's the paper is still under review right now, but I can explain it a little bit. Blended learning is something that instructional designers have to design very carefully. Like you have very specific plans for offline activities and you have specific plans for online activities. And through instructional design, they combine it together. But for this integrated learning, it's a different thing because of this COVID situation here in China, that you will never know who will be in your class in person and who will be in their dorm taking online classes. So we have to make this process smoothly for students who constantly changing from offline to online and then jumping from online to offline. So we use mobile instant messaging as a support tool to facilitate this communication and to make sure this process goes seamless for them.
Now let me see if I got that right. You were calling it integrative learning?
Integrated learning.
Integrated learning.
Yeah.
Is there an author that came up with that? Like my former student, Brian Beatty, came up with high flex model of blended learning, having people being in the room or online. They could be either way and they were integrated in. Is that the same thing that you're talking about there or different?
Sort of, and there's a new term for that. It's called OMO.
Yeah.
Online merge off. Someone
online merge
offline. Yeah.
So I'm on a
coined that
paper with
term.
Beijing Normal, a study being done on that. It's in
yeah,
it's
you're
just published last year. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think,
So-
yeah, that's because of this COVID situation here in China. So a lot of Chinese scholars are studying that mode.
Yeah. In China, it's OMO. In America, it's high flex. I think it's the same thing. Yeah. Or similar anyhow. There's new terminology always. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what other kinds of studies before we end here, what other kinds of work have you done in the past and are you currently doing?
Regarding the MRNUS, I also did a comparative study comparing the use of MIM and discussion forum. So for a lot of discussion activities, scholars would go into discussion forum, but about that, some of the students compared the ease of use of it, and there's a lack of interaction because they always tend to post very long messages there on discussion forum. It's like an essay. It's never like a conversation. So I compared the use of MIM and discussion forum, and that paper was just published last year.
So a long time ago, I compared synchronous chatting to online discussion, which were much longer and convoluted, and there was totally different kinds of interactions and depth and advantages to each one. Now, my students this semester are doing a great job in Canvas. I've been watching every week, and just some years this course has gotten really quite convoluted in terms of the discussion. There's just too much. But we have a class of about 16 in here, and it's not too many. When you have a class of 22 on one discussion forum, it can get real long and convoluted. In my other class, we're using blogging in teams of 3 or 4 or 5 and having the team give feedback to each other on their blog. So we're trying to limit what they're going to look at, not everybody in the class, but just trying to get a group of 3 or a group of 4. Tends to be a more ideal that way. So you're looking at that. So that was a study I think you presented in here. I think you've been in this class presenting both of those studies, or at least one of them.
I think I presented the comparative study on social presence.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So tell them about your study of social presence too before we go.
So of course, MIM is more more facilitative to project and perceive social presence. But for that study, I looked more in depth into different aspects of social presence. So it's also a content analysis, a qualitative study.
By the way, you read from Ying or Dr. Tang earlier in the semester when we covered MOOCs. So she has a study with Timothy Hugh looking at the top 10 most rated MOOCs, and they used machine, they analyzed what you scrape some data. What's that called? Not data mining. Is it data mining using
data mining? Yeah.
Data mining techniques. So what can you tell them what you did in that study? As long as we have you with us.
That study, I conceived the study together with my supervisor, Dr. Timothy Hugh.
An alum of IST.
Yes.
One of the most productive alums of IST, now in Hong Kong, was in Singapore.
Yeah, he's in Hong Kong right now. I did an easy part. There is a computer guy who actually did the text mining, the machine part. And I conceived this study together with my supervisor, and I provided the training material for the computer.
Yeah. So basically, they were mining and looking at the comments on the MOOC when there's a rating. What was the platform where they rated things on? The system. It's called.
Is it Class Central or another one?
It might have been Class Central. Well, actually, no. The system.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Anyhow, by looking at the comments, they found that there were certain things that effective instructors whose courses were rated high were doing, such as giving feedback, using problem-based learning, making it relevant, having a lot of social presence, and so forth. So that was an ingenious study. You were using intact data. You didn't have to, collect data over a period of a year or two. That data existed. No one had been asking that question. So oftentimes, if you can ask a unique question of existing data, you can extend your research really fast. And that's what Ying has done. She's really young, yet she's done a series of studies because she's creatively thought about the data, thought about what exists and how it can be analyzed. So do you prefer quantitative methods or qualitative methods, and why?
I did the qualitative method part. So the procedure of doing that study is that you took out a sample of all those comments, and then you manually coded them first. And this coding, all this coded transcripts will become the training materials for the computer. And the computer will learn from this learning material. So I sort of provided a textbook for the computer, and then the computer guy designed all this computational methods to do that, to do the follow-up, the big part.
You're training the computer, you're training the AI. Okay, interesting.
I provided the materials for you.
So tell us what you're doing now at Southwest China University. What kinds of research do they want you to do? Are they really interested in China? What kind of things do you want to do? First, talk about what they want you to do, if anything.
They want me to do any work that can publish, that has research impact.
Every university wants to move up in the rankings. So yeah.
So meaning that I'm free to do anything that I like. Right
good.
now, I'm still continuing the line of research of my postdoc project. I was designing a set of learning materials, learning modules for computing students to improve their sense and abilities in the social and technical parts of privacy and security. And then that project has not been wrapped up yet. So I'm continue doing that project. And now I'm working with my colleague on this integrated learning project. And then I'm also doing, because I'm teaching a MOOC, not a typical traditional MOOC, but an accredited MOOC course. It's a MOOC-based blended learning course. So I'm doing some research in my class too.
How many students?
I have 120.
Okay. So it's not a giant MOOC. It's
It's a MOOC-based blended learning course.
Okay, I gotcha. So is there anything last you'd like to say to my students in R678 who are in a course that you had taken in the past?
Yeah, that's my lucky class. Of course I met my husband there.
So you too can meet your spouse or your significant other,
Yeah.
your business partner or your grant partner or whatever. It all happens in R678 over the years. Over
Yeah.
30 years, everything has happened in that class.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the best courses I've taken, and Curt is one of the best instructors I've met. Um, I think you're lucky, and if you have any questions, you can send me an email or through the Jamboard.
Yeah.
Curt just mentioned. Yeah.
Please post to the Jamboard, post your questions for Ying, post some things to Padlet, what you got out of today's session, so she can see how you made sense of this and her work. And you've got her article for this week to read. Now you're enticed, hopefully, to read that. So I want to thank Ying for coming in again. And I am going to stop the recording at this point. Is that okay, Ying? Stop to the cloud.